What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we are talking fishing rods, the best rods for specific techniques and everything in between. Guys, we've all been there. In your local tackle shop, you're picking up the different rods, you're flexing them, you're trying to see which rod fits the best style for which technique, and then you get that glazed over look. We've all been there. We've all seen it. Why are there so many different rods on the market? What is power? What is action? What is glass versus, like there's so many different factors that go into fishing rods. We've all heard that question, why do you need so many rods? Well, today we're covering everything. We're covering the different types of rods, the best rods for a given technique, because guess what? You need a different crankbait rod for this guy right here versus this guy right here. And you might need a different rod for a jig hook bait. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some budget rods, some best ways to improve your sensitivity without breaking the bank. And then we're going to go through a bunch of different rod brands and kind of explain or help you understand, kind of go through the coding, the number system, and then what each letter means on those rods. So the next time you walk up to a rod rack in your local tackle shop or you're shopping online, you have a sense of what you need or what you'd want to get, and you won't get that glazed over look. Because rods, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of confusion. For instance, right here, we have a Dobyns 908 versus a Dobyns 700. What do those numbers mean? What's the power? What's the action? What are we going to use for this technique? What are we going to use for that technique? Again, it can be very confusing, but after today's video, you will know exactly the rod you need for the technique you want to fish. So, what is power? Okay? Power is basically how much force it takes to bend the blank of the rod. Typically, power is numbers 0 through 7 or 8. A lot of companies will say heavy, medium heavy, light, right? So typically your number system, typically a 4. So like a 704, so a 4-power rod is a medium heavy powered rod, whereas like a 5-power is typically a heavy. But understand that a heavy in one brand might be a medium heavy in a different brand. So once you figure out the brand of rods you like, once you figure out the actions you like, then you will know where on the scale you need to plug in your next rod, that next purchase to be. So again, understanding heavy power, medium heavy power, medium, extra heavy, right? There's all these different powers, but all that's referring to is the actual power it takes to load or flex that blank, okay? The next thing that I want to explain is the action. So when you look at a rod, it might say 7-foot, medium heavy, fast action. What is action? Action is how quickly that rod bends at the tip. So typically you have extra fast, really, really tippy. You have fast, you have moderate fast, and then you have moderate. Bends a lot farther down in that rod blank. It bends more in the midsection. So typically, treble hook baits, you want more of a moderate or a moderate fast action, okay? So understand that you could have a heavy power, moderate action for like a big 10XD. You still need a heavy rod to be able to cast and reel this back, but you also want to have that moderate, that slower bend in that rod so that it doesn't load and unload really quickly when those fish come up and jump. So understanding action, understanding power is everything in the rod game. Again, if you guys have any questions down below, leave them in the comment section. We'll do our best to help you out and help you understand that. But if you understand power and understand action, that will help you when you're deciding the next rod you need to get. Now, if you're a beginner and if you're on a budget, in two different categories, because there are beginners that don't have a budget and there are budget guys that aren't beginners, right? We're all trying to save a few pennies here and there. And if you are a beginner, let's start there. If you are a beginner and you need to get one spinning rod, I recommend, Matt and I both recommend, like a 7-foot medium power, fast action, extra fast action, okay? That is going to be great for all of your finesse techniques. Most finesse techniques are typically fast or extra fast action, a real tippy rod. Now, why? Why tippy? Why do we want to see that really fast tip? If we're throwing a shaky head, or we're throwing a drop shot, or we're dragging a light Texas rigged, there's this thing called deflection, and that's how, just notice that kids got this thing all wrapped up. That's how fast that rod tip bends. Again, talking about that action, get this untangled real quick. You're going to know, it's a little trick right there. If you just lift that loop up and over that top guide, it'll take that out. But you will know what bites look like, even if you're not paying high dollar for really sensitive rod blanks. And that's typically what you get when you spend more money. You get more sensitive material for those rod blanks. But there's some things you can do. But again, if I'm just recommending one, if you're a beginner, 7-foot medium, fast, extra fast action will do everything you need to do with a medium spinning rod, okay? Shaky head, drop shot, light Texas rigs. You could even throw light top waters on it if you want. But again, we're talking about how fast or slow that rod tip bends. Hopefully you guys can see that. Understand that when you learn what an 1/8 ounce shaky head looks like as you're dragging through gravel or over rocks, I'm always watching my rod tip, right? So there's that 1/8 ounce shaky head. Gets a little heavier. Either I'm hung up or that fish just picked up my bait. I load, I lean back, I feel that reel down and set. Okay, that's called deflection. Watching that rod tip bend, watching that rod tip load. Okay, so you don't need the most sensitive rod in the world to look for deflection. I do it with every rod I throw. I'm always watching my rod tip when I'm dragging or fishing a finesse bait, whether it's a jig, a drop shot, shaky head, whatever it is. And a lot of times, even with the most sensitive rods, especially in the wintertime, you just see that rod tip just load a little bit more, load up on them, okay? But a 7-foot medium, that is a great place to start. As far as a bait caster, I would go with a 7-foot or 7.2 medium heavy. If you're looking at the number, we're gonna talk about that here shortly. That's a 4 power in most cases. But a medium heavy, fast action rod will do a lot of things. You can get away with throwing a crankbait. You can get away with throwing lighter swim bait. It's kind of the workhorse size, power, and action. So a 7-foot to 7'4", medium heavy, fast action rod will do a lot of techniques. Now, Matt and I, between the two of us, we own close to 40 different brands and rods. You know, we've been doing this for a few decades now, and we started, me personally, I started fishing out of a float tube from the bank, from a float tube, and I started with ugly sticks. I started with something that I could spend my money on a decent rod, an inexpensive rod. It had a lifetime guarantee, so if I ever broke it, I could just exchange it. But we've worked our way up from there. Now some of these rods that we have, you know, they're expensive, but you're paying for that sensitivity. You're paying for that special technique that rod is really, really good for. A lot of times when you get into those more expensive rods, those more sensitive rods, they're built for a specific technique. And that's what I want to teach you guys today. When you start growing your arsenal, you start doing more fishing, you start getting more advanced. Maybe you're a tournament fisherman or a trophy fisherman, or you just really enjoy fishing and you want to grow your arsenal. You're going to have a specific rod for a lipless crankbait. You're gonna have a specific rod for a square bill, maybe a smaller square bill, maybe a bait finesse square bill. You're gonna have a different rod for a medium-sized glide bait and a large-sized glide bait. And you might even have two of the same rods for your favorite finesse technique. But you're gonna have different rods rigged up and ready for those different techniques. And that's where you kind of acquire more and more rods. Now, before we dive down into this rabbit hole of the different types of rods, I want to two things I want to talk about. One, we talked about already, the deflection, watching that deflection, that rod tip. And then two, the number one thing that you as a fisherman, doesn't matter if you're beginner, experienced on a budget or whatever, adding braided line, using braided line to your fishing will increase your rod sensitivity. I'm gonna say one level or a couple of it. It's gonna make it more sensitive than the actual rod itself, if that makes sense. So adding added braided line to your reel and fishing braid to a fluorocarbon leader or a monofilament leader will make your rod fish or feel a level up in sensitivity. That's the number one thing you can do to increase the sensitivity on your rod. Another tip for you guys, if you're a beginner and you're learning how to throw a bait caster, you went out and you got that 7'2", 7'4", medium heavy fast action rod, go ahead, take out 30 or 45 feet of line, then put a little piece of tape on your reel and then reel your line back up. That way, as you're learning to cast and learning to get the fundamentals down of throwing a bait caster, you're not blowing up your entire spool of line. If you do backlash, you're only messing up 30 to 45 feet of line. So two little tips there for you guys. But understanding rods, you know, we talked about it a little bit earlier in this video. When you're looking at a long rod rack of rods and you're looking at a 840, 841, 842, 843, 844, 845. What does that mean? What does that mean in Loomis? What does that mean in Dobbins? What does that mean in Shimano? What does that mean in St. Croix? They all have different meanings. So we're gonna kind of go through that because once you find, I know every angler is different, but for me, I like to have kind of a system. And I know that, you know, for this technique, I'm gonna have this rod. If I need a little bit more power, I'm gonna go with this rod. I like to have everything organized. So let's go ahead and jump into these rods. I'm gonna show you the different combos and read the different combos on the rods, the numbers, the letters, and explain what those mean. All right, had to move the boat. The sun was setting and had to get back into the sun so that everything wasn't all shaded. Earlier in this video, I showed you this 908, right? This is a stout rod, 9 foot 8 power versus this 700, 7 foot 0 power. Completely different rods, okay? Completely, night and day. So now let's talk about these power and actions through the different brands. Okay, understand that as you typically, for all these brands, as you increase the price point, you get more sensitivity, you're paying for sensitivity, but most of these higher end rods are going to be a fast or extra fast action rod, right? Real tippy, real sensitive, real tippy. They're gonna be more of your finesse applications. Now that's just a general statement. That's not, there's always exceptions to the rules. I know guys that will throw a topwater or a frog on a $600 Loomis, right? You don't have to do that. You're paying for a lighter rod, you're paying for a more sensitive rod, but you don't really need sensitivity when you're throwing a frog up, you know, on slop and those bass are coming up through it and blowing up and you're visually seeing those blow ups. So for me, I don't go out and spend a ton of money for visual reaction techniques, topwaters, frogs, that sort of stuff. Typically, I personally am spending money in my bottom contact techniques where I need that sensitivity, where I need that lighter feel in my hand. I want to feel connected to that bait. I want to feel what's going on down there. Am I fishing through clay or mud or gravel, pea gravel, chunk rock, that sort of thing? That's where I'm paying for higher end rod blanks sensitivity for those finesse applications. Now, as you start at your price points, you know, your $50, $60, $70 rods, those are gonna be fairly moderate action rods, slower action. We talked about adding that braid, but they're gonna be fairly moderate. And then when you start getting up into the higher price points, you get more into that fast and extra fast action with those higher quality materials, faster action, more sensitivity rods, okay? More sensitive rods. Now let's go through, I laid out a bunch of rods here, a bunch of different brands. Down below in the video description, Matt and I will link our favorite rod model for each technique, primary technique, topwater, punching, Carolina rig, Texas rig, chatterbait, you know, whatever technique it is, if there's enough room, down below in the video description, we'll lay out our favorite rod for that technique. And then after this video, you'll understand what the power and the action are of said rod, okay? So let's do spinning first. We talked about this guy already. Again, the number one thing you can do, add braid to a leader to increase sensitivity. This is gonna be more of a, see what that bend is? It's down here at the fourth or fifth guide, more of a moderate action rod. Now you go to something like this. This is my favorite drop shot rod. This will be good, I'll go over both. This is the G Loomis NRX Plus 822S DSR. Okay, what does that mean? It's basically speaking a different language. 822S. So in the rod world, there's basically two ways to list the length of your rod. Loomis, for whatever reason, it is inches. So 82 inches, 6'10". So 822, so 82 inches to power. Okay, we talked about power before. Remember that Dobbins I just held up that was a 0 power? This is I'm all tangled up here, give me just a second. So this is an 82 inch, 822, 82 inch 2 power. So Loomis does inches, whereas like that example before with that 908 Dobbins, 908, 9 foot, 9 foot, 8 power. Okay, so difference right there. Loomis does inches. A lot of the other companies do, like Shimano, 6'10". That's a 6'10", okay? So they do foot and an inch, whereas Loomis just is inches. But you can see right here, look how fast that tip is. This is considered fast, right? It's bending at that first, second, third guide. Again, real tippy. You want that, as you're shaking that rod tip, you want that, ooh, wind's picking up. You're shaking that rod tip and you want that drop shot just shaking right? You don't need that whole rod to load and unload. You want that just real subtle shakes. So 822 2 power. This one's rated 1/8 ounce to 3/8 ounce, 6 to 12 pound line. So basically 1/8 ounce to 3/8 ounce drop shot. But again, comparing these actions, slower, faster. Again, a lot more sensitive, a lot lighter, but again, completely different price point, okay? The other thing that you can do if you are on a budget or you are a beginner fisherman is increase your actual rod length. We talked about that deflection earlier, right? Watching that rod tip, it's a lot easier to do with a longer rod, okay? If I'm throwing here's a St. Croix spinning rod. This is a VTS 710 ML XF. What does that mean? So VTS, that's Victory, 710, that's a 7'10", ML XF, medium light, extra fast. Okay, so a 7'10" spinning rod. Now this is an extreme. This is an awesome hair jig rod. With that longer rod, you get a longer casting distance, but better, you get that deflection. It's easier to see that tip load and unload like we talked about as you're dragging, or if you're fishing a hair jig specifically, you know, that's a technique that's really known. Ultra clear water, light line up in the northern part of the country. For big smallmouth, you're throwing a 16th ounce or an 1/8 ounce hair jig. You're just reeling this thing along. You're watching that rod tip and it just loads a little bit more. That means that bass just came up and just sucked it in. You don't feel that bite, but now that rod just loads a little bit more. You're not on bottom. You're not ticking stuff. You know that that thing just got bit without ever feeling that bite. Now, with that said, there are a couple companies that typically their actions are more moderate or slower than most. That's St. Croix and that's Cashin. So if you like more faster tips or faster actions, understand that if you're going with Croix or Cashin, they run a little bit slower. So they're extra fast in a St. Croix might be like a fast or a moderate fast in other brands. Just understand that. But getting back to it, adding that extra length allows you to see that deflection easier for me than on a shorter rod, if that makes sense. Okay, so watch for deflection, watch for or get braided line, and then try, if you can, get a little bit longer rod on those finesse techniques, and you can watch that rod tip. Makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so we talked a little bit about spinning. If I have any more spinning rods over here, we'll talk casting here in a second. But again, 7'10", that thing is an awesome, awesome hair jig rod. It is a long rod, so it can be, if you're just dragging and stuff, you might be better off going with a little bit shorter of a rod. But 7'10", that is an awesome, awesome ultra light hair jig rod. Okay? You guys are like, hair jig rod? I've never even seen a hair jig. Again, we're talking about as we branch out and we're growing our arsenal, the technique specific rods. What can we, what rod throws that specific technique the best, right? What is it designed for? And a lot of these companies, you'll see them now. They have, like this guy right here, it's actually got a picture of a lipless crankbait on there, right? They know what that rod was designed for. Okay, and Matt and I, like I said, we try all these. Sometimes we agree with the recommendation, sometimes we don't, but understanding the system and how these all work, what these numbers mean, will allow you to figure out the system and see what works for you. Okay, so we got spinning out of the way. Again, typically I'm going with the lightest, most sensitive rod that I can for finesse techniques, because I want to feel the subtle pickups. I want to see that deflection. But for the most part, bait casters, A lot of it's reaction stuff. We're gonna talk about that here shortly. So next rod up, read this for you. This is an X Pride, Shimano X Pride. The number EXC 711XHB. What does that mean? EXC, X Pride casting, 711, so 711, so 7'11", XHB, extra heavy. B is the second generation of X Prides. They have the A's and the B's. Okay, so this is a 711 extra heavy fast, or even, yeah, fast. Let's see. So this is my heavy flipping stick. This is, I mean, this is almost a pool cue. So 1.5 ounce tungsten, pitching this in, punching this through heavy vegetation around thick, heavy cover, okay? But a 711 extra heavy. Now, we know that that's not gonna be the best rod for a little crankbait, right? You want something that has more of a moderate action to bend, to load, unload, bend, unbend, however you want to say it, with these little treble hooks. But with that punching setup, it's straight power on power. You're going 65-pound braid, straight braid, 1.5 ounce, 2 ounce tungsten weight, a heavy, heavy wire, punching hook, and it's just power on power. We talked about this guy already. That's the 908 Dobbins 908 Ultra Mag swim bait rod, 9 foot, 8 power. Basically, that's one of the heaviest power rods that I have. That's for throwing my magnum sized jig hook swim baits, okay? Keep going down this line. You guys have heard us talk about this rod for a long time. Back to a Loomis. This is the 966C SWBR Mod Fast Action. 966, again, we're in the Loomis, so that's 96 inches, which is 8 foot, 966, so 6 power, okay? So 96 inches, 8 foot rod, 6 power C casting, SWBR, swim bait rod. It's 3 to 8 ounces, 25 to 45 pound line recommendation, moderate fast action. This is a special rod. This is our favorite swim bait rod. We've talked about it for years. This is a rod that you can throw your large treble hook baits because that moderate fast action, it loads deeper in the blank. So you're dealing with lighter hooks. You don't want that rod to load and unload when that fish comes up and jumps and spits that treble hook. So it loads deeper into that midsection of the rod. But this also has a fast enough tip that you can throw your favorite 6 and 7, even 8-inch soft plastic swim baits with a jig hook. You want to reel down and jack them. You want to set that hook. You don't have to worry about the lighter treble hooks. This rod is an awesome, awesome swim bait rod. Can throw treble hook glide baits, can throw jig hook swim baits. That's an awesome bait. Okay, awesome rod. Can throw a lot of baits. Okay, next up, this is a Fenwick World Class. Been really, really happy with these new World Classes from Fenwick. This guy right here, let's read this guy. This is a WLDB 710 XHF. Okay, so world class, 710, so 7'10", extra heavy, fast. What do you think that's gonna be for? Extra heavy, fast. Again, we're talking this game right here. Flipping and punching. That thing is a broomstick. It's got a fast tip. You're gonna hit them hard, and you're gonna have, this rod's actually really light and sensitive. For the longest time, that 711 extra heavy's been my go-to punching rod. Really excited to put this to work in Florida here in a little bit to really set the hook with this guy right here. But this thing seems awesome. Again, 710 extra heavy. Now, a lot of you guys can already check out of this video. Hopefully you understand the difference between power and action and how you can give and take a little bit and come up with the best rod for any situation or any technique. If If you want to continue down this rabbit hole, we'll continue. But this guy right here, another Loomis rod. This is the 855C CBR. So 855, 85 inches, which is 7'1", 5 power, C for casting, CBR, crankbait rod. Again, 3/8 ounce to an ounce, 10 to 20 pound, fast action, which is interesting because this is a crankbait rod. They're saying it's a fast action, but I would say it's more of a mod fast. You guys know that we love this rod. This is our favorite lipless crankbait rod for hopping a TN70 or an LV500 or a red eye shad or what your favorite lipless, right? This thing is an awesome, awesome rod. Again, it loads a little bit deeper into the blank. Again, when you're hopping that thing, dong, they come up, they're tail walking. You don't want this tip to load and unload and leave slack in your line. You want to keep that fish pegged. You want to keep that line tight on those hooks, and that's where that little bit slower taper really comes into play. But again, they're calling that a fast action. I'd say it's more of a moderate fast, but either way, that is an awesome, awesome lipless crankbait rod and can be used for throwing square bills. Okay, next up, what do we got? This is the Zenin line from Abu Garcia. These things are super light. This one is ZNB FC 715 medium fast. So what do we got? We got Zenin baitcaster 7'1", so 7'1", 5. That's going to be your power. So 5 power, medium fast. So this is going to be a heavy. Okay. It's got a really, actually, pretty soft tip. So I would say medium heavy. Yeah, medium fast. So 7'1", 5, medium. They're calling it a medium fast action. Okay. Really tippy rod, loads a little bit slower. That thing's super light. Okay, what do we got up next? Megabass Destroyer. Now Megabass, instead of they start with an F. That's their force, I believe is what they call that. So this is an F 4.5 or 4.1, 4.5, 7'1". Okay, so that's a 4.5 power or force. So instead of power, they're saying force. So 4.5 force or power, and that's a 7'1". So 7'1", and this is actually their dark sleeper rod. Okay, so let's look at this. You guys are always wondering what guys, when you see them putting the rod tip down, I always do it on the carpet. I don't like doing it on hard surfaces because I don't want to mess up that front guide, the tip of the rod. But I'm always checking the bend. I want to see where that rod starts loading into that lower or that mid section of the rod, how fast that tip loads. Because again, we've already seen it. Different brands recommend or have a different scale on how they label their rods. So again, 4.5 power, 7'1". This is their dark sleeper rod. You guys know what an awesome little single swim bait, dark sleeper, little Kitech, whatever, single swim bait underspin that rod is right there. Really, really light, really sensitive. Another one from this, the Megabass line. This is the Destroyer P5. This is a F 3.5 7.0, so a 3.5 power, 7 foot, but this is their Z crank Eisel. Okay, a little bit more moderate tip right there, a little bit moderate. Again, we're losing sunlight, but you can see this thing is awesome for throwing little crankbaits, little square bills, little lipless, and I love throwing top waters on it. Again, you're getting more of that moderate action. Again, we're not talking power, we're talking action. So a little bit more bend, slower taper in the midsection. Again, treble hook baits, you want a little slower action, easier to keep those treble hooks pegged, keep those fish pinned. Okay, got a couple more for you. This is a Daiwa. This is STAGS 721 MFB. Okay, what does that mean? That's a mouthful. STAGS, so that's gonna be stees. AGS, that's gonna be guides, that's the special, that's their AGS guides. 721 MF. I'm going to say 721, so 7'2", 1 power, moderate fast. That's what I'm going with on this one. And it is totally moderate fast. They're calling this one moving bait versatile. So again, treble hook baits. Again, a little slower taper action. 1 power. This is going to be an awesome little reaction bait rod. Okay. So again, that's a mouthful. That was the ST AGS 721 MFB. So Steez AGS 7'2", 1 power, moderate fast. Rated 6 to 16 pound test line. Cranking rods. I do want to explain this because like I said earlier, you're going to need a different rod for this guy than you're going to need for this guy that you're going to need for this guy. So you can increase the power of your rod, but you're not necessarily going to change up the action. You're going to have more of a moderate or a moderate fast action, but you can increase your power. So this guy right here, this is our favorite rod for throwing our tactical crank, a Deep 6, a Deep X300, any of those, a DT16, DT20 works really well. Any of those medium, I'm gonna say 12 to like 18 foot depth range crankbaits. 906 C CBR. So 90, 90 inches is 7'6", C, 6 power, CBR, okay? Moderate fast action. Whereas if you wanna throw a 10XD, you're gonna need something, another power up. Another great option from St. Croix, LBTC 710 XHM, okay? Legend Bass Tournament, casting, 7'10", extra heavy, moderate. So extra heavy, okay? This is gonna be your 10XD rod. Extra heavy, moderate. Again, that extra heavy power, moderate action. Another St. Croix for you. EC 610 MXF. So this is the Legend Elite 6'10", medium, extra fast. I want to show you guys this one. This is the Shimano X Pride 610 medium. Again, we talked about brands. Look how much more moderate the Legend, the St. Croix, their extra fast is than the Shimano. Again, nothing wrong with that. Just know that when you're shopping online or you're looking in the tackle shop. This 6'10" medium is by the X Pride is one of our favorite do-all rods. It's an awesome jerk bait rod. It's an awesome little blade bait rod. It's an awesome do-everything rod. You know, I'll flip and pitch light drop shots or shaky heads around here on Chickamauga with it. Whereas this guy right here, having that little bit slower action, this thing is an awesome fluke rod. You know, it's an awesome jerk bait rod. Has a little bit slower action, allows you to throw some of those lighter jerk baits with smaller hooks, but understand that not all 610 mediums are identical. Couple more for you and then we'll get out of here. But what do we got? We got this guy right here. This is a different rod I wanted to talk about. You guys have heard Matt beat this horse for a long time. This is an NRX 844C MBR, 7-foot fast heavy, but it's a mag bass rod. Typically in Loomis lines, it's JWR, jig and worm rods. This is mag bass rod. So it's a more of a moderate action. Again, ultralight, ultra sensitive, but this thing is a lot like that Loomis swimbait rod. It's a workhorse. It's an expensive workhorse. It's an ultra sensitive light workhorse, but you can throw everything from spinner baits to jigs to top waters on it because it has a fast tip, but it also loads fairly quick into that midsection. So you can get away with throwing treble hook baits on it. So it totally depends on the bait you're throwing and your hook set. If you're throwing a single hook swim bait or a spinner bait, you're gonna jack them hard. If you're throwing a top water and they blow up, you're gonna load into them, right? This rod is kind of a unicorn because it can do so many things extremely well. What do we got here? We got a Croy. This is from their physics line. PHX 68 MXF. So physics 6'8", so 6'8", medium, extra fast. A little bit shorter rod, extra fast. We know with St. Croix, we know with Cashin, their actions are a little bit slower than a lot of the other brands in the lineup. But this is an awesome, awesome sensitive light rod. And then last but not least, Cashin. We got two from Cashin I grabbed for you. This is, what's cool about Cashin and St. Croix is they're rolled, their blanks are made here in the States, which is really, really cool. What do we got? We got MP 71MH-MF. So MP, multi-purpose, well, it's EMP, so element, multi-purpose, 7'1", medium heavy, moderate fast, okay? So we got MH, MF, so medium heavy, moderate fast, okay? See that slower bend, slower taper? These rods are awesome. This thing's light. BFS 68 UL. What is that? So we got Icon Bait Finesse Series System 6'8" ultralight fast. Okay? This thing's rated 2 to 8 pound, 1/32 ounce to a 3/8 ounce, but a 6'8" ultralight fast. So this is a bait finesse rod. But now, guys, understanding the letters, understanding the numbers, understanding that there's no really set guidelines out there for this is really what makes everything confusing, right? One power in this brand might be a different power in this brand, and this action might say it's moderate fast, but over here it seems more like a fast. But understand there's no really, there is a system, but there's no really foundation for every brand to kind of work off of, if that makes sense. So understanding the numbers, understanding the actions, the powers will help you guys now the next time you're online and you're searching rods and there's all these different codes. Hopefully you can now decipher what those mean and understand if you need a moderate or a moderate fast action rod versus an extra fast or a fast action rod, the different techniques you're going to use them for, and then understanding the powers. Again, the number systems, you know, basically 0 through 8, kind of it showed that to you. Here's a 0 power, here's an 8 power, completely different, and then everything in between, the 3, 4, 5, 6, it's just one step up in power. But guys, hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, please leave those down below in the comment section. We'll try to get to those as soon as possible. But now you have an answer to, or an answer for, the next time your girlfriend or wife or friend asks, why do you have so many rods? As you continue to grow your arsenal, you continue to figure out as a fisherman the different techniques that you like to fish. Understanding this will allow you to get the best rod for that specific technique. Now back to the budget guys, back to the beginners. If you're looking for a rod for everyday use that can do multiple things, whether it's spinning, go with that 7'2", 7'0", you know, medium. And then if it's a casting, go with a 7 foot to 7'4", medium heavy. You guys can do a lot of different techniques with those two choices. And then as you continue to grow your arsenal, getting those technique specific rods will really help and really make fishing that technique more enjoyable. Pay attention to that deflection, add some braid to your rod, and you guys will have more success out on the water. Guys, like I said, If you have any questions, and hopefully I didn't make this more confusing, but if I did, leave those comments down below in the comment section. We'll try to get to those as soon as possible. But as always, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. If you learned something from this video or you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video.